All right, guys, here we go. Mike Gonsalves here, and I am super excited today to have the opportunity to chat with Pam Slim. So, Pam, thank you so much for being here.
I am super delighted to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I have a brief, formal introduction for you, so if you don't mind, I'd like to read it here. And I actually read it because one of my fears is that I'm going to mess it up, so I want to make sure I get it all correctly. So, first of all, Pam, you are an award-winning author, speaker, and business consultant. You are frequently quoted as a business expert in different publications such as the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Entrepreneur, Business Week, Forbes, Information Week. I could go on and on, Money Magazine. You've also been an entrepreneur now for 20 years. 20 years, guys. And you've helped thousands of entrepreneurs start businesses they believe in and are passionate about. I absolutely love that. You're the author of two books. The first one, Escape from Cubicle Nation, as well as Body of Work. And you also practice, I love this last piece here, you also practice the Afro-Brazilian capoeira, I hope I'm saying that correctly, for 11 years. And guys, in case you're wondering what capoeira is, it's a Brazilian martial art that combines elements of dance, acrobats, and music. Is that right, Pam?
That's right. Capoeira. That's right.
Capoeira. Thank you. And lastly, now get this, you also studied mixed martial arts and received your black belt in July of 2013. That is so incredible. So, I mean, so much to dive into there. But again, Pam, thank you so much for being here.
I'm super happy to be here, Mike.
All right, let's do this. I want to dive right in, Pam. First of all, I work with entrepreneurs. I help them create a healthy mind, healthy body in order to go on and create a healthy business or cultivate one if you already have one. And you recently wrote a blog post that I loved and I want to talk about. I want to dive into here more so. It was titled, "What is your attitude towards obstacles?" And in it, you talk about the importance of attitudes and behaviors when it comes to building a business. And I apply that almost to any kind of fitness goal you might have. So whether it's fitness or business. And you mentioned how we all want a blueprint for getting there. Hey, do X, do Y, do Z. So we all want that blueprint. And you also mentioned how we've been socialized, and I could not agree with you more to think or believe in instant results or gratification. For example, lose 10 pounds in negative 3 days, or write a book in a weekend. And in it, you say this, and this is what I want to talk to you about. No one wants to hear the truth when it comes to what it takes. And you ask in there, can attitudes change towards that? So I want to start by asking you that. Pam, can they change? Can those attitudes change? And if so, how do we change them?
Yeah, I think they can change, and we are very malleable. We can do a lot more than we think we can, and we don't often, I say the global we, myself included, right? At different stages of life and in different elements, we get really stuck in patterns and habits and belief systems about what it is that we think, and it is understandable to want to take the easy path, to be sitting and going, how did I get the extra 20 pounds, which is like where I am right now, I was doing so good, what happened? And just wanted to say, like, I just want it all gone by the time I'm, on the beach next week. But the reality is, if you look at, to me, the end goal, which is really healthy, sustainable change in your business or in your body and in your mind, it is tiny incremental habits. It's developing a certain kind of awareness where you really deeply understand what actually is driving a lot of our behaviors. And I've been diving in big time this year. One of my longtime clients, who's an amazing performance coach, his name is Mark Otto. He's been reverse engineering and coaching me, which has been fantastic because I didn't realize to the extent to which certain habits were totally getting in my way in terms of how it is not just looking at what I created, but also in the feeling that I had while I was creating it. And part of it was recognizing like really subtle habits. We call it like spiral moments, where there can be, we were just talking about this yesterday. He was saying he didn't come up with this formula. We're trying to remember who did, but it's brilliant, which is you have an event, and then you have, which is E, you have your reaction to the event, and then you have the outcome, right? So it's E plus R equals O. And what we were noticing, I had some situation happen with a client where all of a sudden I knew I needed to do something. And in the past, it could be where that would totally lend a spiral, everything from, oh my gosh, I didn't do that. I need to get it done to, why did I do that? Why do I ever do that? They're going to be mad, going down the spiral, much like you might do if you're shoving a chocolate croissant or something in your face, right? After eating clean or whatever for a week. And so it's the awareness that's the point. That's the point where first you begin to recognize, we can't change events, right? We can't change totally busy times in our business. We can't change when the market changes or a client is unhappy or whatever, but we can begin to develop an awareness of what is that typical reaction? Is that actually the reaction that we want to have? Is emotional eating or just sitting on the couch watching Netflix for 12 hours? Like, is that actually something that long term is going to lead to a sustainable habit? So it's like the awareness is a first piece. And then there's beginning to have those where you can catch yourself and then you can shift it to something positive right away.
Sure. It's almost like the more you do it, and I can speak for myself included, my habits, things that I work on myself, the more I do them, at the beginning, it's like, oh my goodness, this is never going to work. But the more you do them, the more like, hey, it seems like you're able to do it a little bit more and a little bit more. And one of the things we talk about, Pam, in Entrepreneur Fitness Academy, which is a 30-day experience that I work with the folks, the entrepreneurs I work with, is whether we call it awareness, and we almost look at it, the awareness of what we focus on. It's almost like what you're saying. Like, I could focus on the fact that I did shove that croissant in my mouth and like, what am I doing? Why did I do that? Or I could focus on, well, what will I do next time so that croissant isn't around or that I don't. So awareness, that is such a big part of it. And I think that, and I like, one more thing I want to point out that I love that you said, Pam, is small incremental habits. Love that. I preach that all the time, because sometimes we think it's like that 2-hour workout on Saturday that, or that, all-nighter you pull writing creating that business plan. It's not really that big event. It's just those small incremental habits that are progressing you forward. And I couldn't agree with you more. So thank you for sharing that. That's powerful stuff. Awareness, guys. Awareness. If you're hearing that, the one word I took out of there, awareness and small incremental habits.
That's right. Awareness. And then you begin to shift your reaction. So you pay attention to next time, how can you shift your reaction? And what we were talking about yesterday with Mark is that it's okay. It's natural to have that emotional reaction. You can have that feeling of like, oh, why did I eat that croissant or something?
Yeah.
And that we replay the emotion over and over and over. So it's okay if it has like its 90-second, like, oh my God, or stronger word. I'll keep it PG-13, right, for your audience. But the reality is then we keep replaying and replaying and replaying. So it's catching it. I would say embrace the fact that you love, like, how good did that taste?
Sure.
Who cares? That's wonderful, right? Enjoy that moment, appreciate the fact, oh my gosh, I messed up. Let me make it right because I love this client, right? Shifting immediately into that. So,
absolutely.
And, when I used to teach capoeira for a lot of beginner students, the martial arts taught me so many things in terms of this whole approach. And I would notice people, a really big difference. It was very fascinating. Some people would walk in the door and we'd have mixed like beginner and advanced students in the same room. So you see the advanced students doing backflips and all these, amazing tricks that are incredible in capoeira. And you see some people who would walk in the door and like the whole time I'd be talking to them and they'd be like looking over at the other people and like, when can I do that? And then often what was interesting is people maybe who were more seasoned martial artists who might come in to try a different style were totally focused on wanting to learn what that particular technique was, because you can't skip steps. In order to have the mental, physical, spiritual strength that you need in order to handle both physically bigger moves, but then also kind of more challenging fights, right? That you actually need to be practicing those tiny little things, 1,000 push-ups a day or sit-ups or all the crazy stuff I did in my 20s, right? Like every single day showing up to do that also helps you build the emotional stamina in order to handle success that can come or challenge that can come. And that's a real problem I see with entrepreneurs. It's an exact parallel. You can have an instant, like weird fluke success where you like have a viral post and right, something goes crazy. Very different than having a long-term sustainable business and having the leadership to know, like it's just sometimes by chance that we end up having super, great business success. We think we're geniuses when it works. We think we're total failures when it doesn't work, but very often it's like it is a fluke. And then what can make it sustainable is where you are practicing every single day those habits and the
Yes.
networks and the practices that are going to build a more sustainable business.
Yes, I love that you can't skip steps. I just if there's one thing I want to hold, you can't skip steps. I love that. I could say that like 100 times. You can't because I know we want to go from A to Z, but really, actually a lot of the growth comes within the A to Z. That's the growth. That's what makes us allows us to handle the Z is the growth in between. So I love that, guys. I feel you can't skip steps. That I took away from that, Pam. And the one thing you said earlier was, I'm guilty of this, a sin, and I'm getting better at it, is, you keep dwelling on those emotions that something happened, you keep dwelling, stop dwelling. I forgot who put it. You just watch it go by. Just watch, acknowledge it. Hey, there it is. And just watch it and just let it, don't keep coming back to it. I love that.
Yeah.
Love those 2 points. Thank you for that, Pam. Super powerful. Man, we could end this interview right there, and it's tons of value right there. Just one question. I want to know, and this is different for everyone. In the 30-day experience that I work with the entrepreneurs, Entrepreneur Fitness Academy, we call it creating a champion's mindset. In other words, like what fires you up? Like you've been at this for 20 years now. That's a long time. I've been doing
21, actually. It'd be 21 years, August 15th. Yep.
Oh my goodness. 20. I've been at it for 4, and I'm like, oh my God. So 21. I want to know, like, whether it's your champion's mindset, like, what fires you up? Like, some people it's like audio, or some people it's like videos and music, or what is it that fires you up, that keeps you going for those 21 years, with the ups and downs? What is that for you?
It's the clients. It's the experience of watching people grow and develop. It's client wins and losses, right? It can be those really intimate kinds of conversations of really just being with somebody and hearing what it is that they're going through, and then in looking at what the results are. I had a client just this morning. She's fantastic, and I love what she does. She's just very detail oriented. So she does like a progress update every time for our session. So she'll give like this detailed analysis of like, here's what happened, here was the mood, and I'm like, I love this progress report, I think more than you do. Like it's so enjoyable. And she's been totally kicking ass, which is fantastic. So that's also been great to see that. But that's it. That's it for me. It's seeing the change, it's having the conversation, seeing people be brave enough to take the action. I love music. John Legend's my guy. Always definitely will, like, if I'm not feeling good or need to break the flow, it is really good to listen to music. Music is definitely something that helps. But overall, the true deep, I called it in body of work, my roots is sustained in watching people be brave and make positive change. That's it. Like nothing fuels me more than that.
I love that. We share that in common for sure, Pam. I get so off on, whenever I get something, whether it's report, I don't get detailed reports like that for my clients, although I might start implementing that. But no, just if anything, I would almost label it. It sounds like if I'm hearing this correctly, you get fired up just from the process itself, the process, the work, the client, the feedback, the wins, even the losses, like you said, just the process, if you will.
Yeah.
That is. I know, because sometimes we always want to get there, but it's like realize that the fun, even though we don't realize it, is in the process. It's all about the process. I love that. I want to know, we all have our own habits and rituals we do in the morning. Some don't, some do, some maybe in the afternoon. Do you have any morning habits or rituals? And if so, what are they?
So I do. I get up usually now a little bit earlier because it's so hot here. I'm in Arizona, so it's 120 yesterday, so it's a little warm. So I get up between 4:30 and 5, and I walk for an hour. So just in our neighborhood, just do a few loops around the neighborhood. And it's a combination sometimes of just quietly thinking and or talking to my best friend, Desiree, because that's a really, important connection for me. And we've talked every day for 33 years. So it's a really important kind of grounding piece. And it's a combination of just getting out and walking around and moving that's really helpful. And then we do as a family, my husband's Navajo and was raised traditional Navajo. And so we do with the kids when it's school time and we're all kind of on our work school schedule, we all sit together quietly and before we go out of the house, and we do, my husband calls power of intention, where we all like quietly visualize what it is that we want, like what is our intention. and see ourselves like walking through obstacles, and then we just do some deep breathing, and then do a do a group hug. And
Awesome.
it's very powerful. It's something. My kids now are 9 and 12,
Wow.
and this is funny. Like, it's funny because the example is not necessarily the healthy one, but it was hilarious because I was in the store with my daughter. We were going grocery shopping, and we were in like the bread section, and she looked over and there was a donut, and she was like, "Oh, mom, that donut looks really good. Like, I really want that donut." And she goes, "I know, I'm not gonna have. I shouldn't have it." I'm like, "Yeah." So then we cross all the way across the store. We're like buying beans or something, and I kid you not, this woman comes up with a shopping cart, and she said, "I have a coupon for a free donut. Would you like it?" And it was like we both just looked at each other. It was like, even though it was a donut, like I wish it were like a banana or something, or some grapes. But
Oh
like, it
man.
was just amazing. And so for her, at the age of 9 years old, she just starts to see, and you play with it, right? Doesn't happen
Wow.
every single time,
Right.
but it's actually quite powerful. She's done it. They were going to Crazy Air, like one of the trampoline jumping places. Here's my healthier example. Thank God. You're going to start to judge me really bad with the donuts. But she was like, she wanted her best friend to go, and it was totally booked. They had like an overnight trampoline thing, which is so cool, where the kids stay overnight and they jump and they watch
Wow.
movies and
It's
stuff.
cool.
But there was no room for her best friend. And so she sat down. She was sitting that afternoon by herself. She got really quiet. She was meditating, and she was visualizing seeing her best friend be able to do it, because her best friend's brothers were all going. So her best friend showed up. They're like, "Nope, it's booked. Nope, no way." They asked a bunch of times. And I finally went over. It was like 5 minutes before they were going to lock up. And I said, "Is everybody here? Are you totally positive?" And they were like, "Actually, somebody didn't show up." So then she was able
Wow.
to do
Come
it.
on.
And it's like, it's this combination of like seeing that you need to visualize what it is that you want. And also, you have to back it up with action. Like, you have to ask for it, right? Except if it's a donut, in which case somebody randomly gives you a coupon for a free donut.
Right.
So
Right.
that
I love
that
that.
that's actually been a really powerful thing for us as a family and for us individually. I'm telling you, it feels very different. My creative process feels a lot different every day because of doing that.
Man, the whole idea. First of all, the walk movement. I'm a big fan of that. I get up at 4:30. Not that I like getting up at 4:30, but I like the results. It gives me the energy, the clarity, the confidence for the day. So I'm up early as well, Pam. So I'm all for movement in the morning. I love that you get your hour walk, and I want to dive into that here in a second too. And then that whole just setting the intention. I love that. I'm always looking for different things to add to my morning rituals. That might be one of them, man, going forward. I want to comment on one thing that I saw. I don't know if I saw it, it's or read it, or maybe it was an interview you did that I loved, that we share in common, that I think you mentioned you have coffee with your husband every morning. That's something you guys do. I don't know if you still do it, but
Yes, we do.
sometimes I
Right
can't even
here.
sometimes I can't even see. I'm stumbling with my coffee cup but I always same here. I always have my coffee with my girlfriend. That's our thing. It doesn't matter where we are, what we're doing. I sharing that with you. I just love that. It's such a great way to start the day. So I wanted to say, hey, we share that in common. We both have coffee with our significant
I
others.
love coffee. And it's another thing, kind of like the combination in the relationship where whoever it is that gets up early, my
Mm.
husband's always been an early bird too, so he gets up. And I was thinking about this. I was almost going to write a post about it the other day, because we'll make coffee, and there's that thought you can have in that moment of like, "Oh, I'm busy, I'm just going to make my own." But really stopping and taking the time to do it for the other person. We have in my family, when he married into my family, my dad and my brother, and then my bonus dad, who is my stepdad, who passed away a couple years ago. All the men in my family make coffee for the women in my family, which I feel is very awesome personally. So,
Yes, of course, of course.
and so that's kind of a tradition that my husband has, gotten into, but it
Yes.
also feels good to be doing it for him. So not only is coffee fantastic, and it's also something that's just like that. That's an example of a tiny, nurturing way to say, "I love you, I care for you, and I'm going to take time for you, even if I'm busy." And it just takes 2 minutes. But very often you can get in habits where you're like, "Oh, got mine, see you later." And then disconnection begins to happen. And
Oh
that's
my goodness.
that's in your romantic relationships, and it's also within other kinds of friendships.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's those small steps, whether it's like, what's this, whether it's the coffee, whether it's, hey, I missed this day of getting coffee, whether it's like, hey, what's one workout? You add them up. I call it compound. Everyone knows compounding interest and the effects it has. I call it
Yeah.
compounding health. You do those small things. They add up. You might not look at it. You might not see it today. But man, a month, 6 months, 6 years, it adds
Yeah.
up. And I can't help but think of Jim Rohn, who says, hey man, the recipe for success is a few simple disciplines practiced every day. Few simple, small, daily.
Yeah.
The recipe for failure is a few simple disciplines not practice. Right? It's like what's easy to do is also easy not to do. So
Yes.
but they add up in your favor. Pam, I want to go back to what you said, and actually, my next question was on goal setting, and because you brought that whole intention visualization, I really want to ask you about this. I want to know your thought process around goal setting. I'm all for it. We do successful goal setting in those 30 days that we work with entrepreneurs. Successful goal setting. I want to know your thoughts on it, but more so, the act of physically writing it down, and then you just brought up another great point, is just visualizing, setting the intention. Are
Hmm.
those the same, or can you pick one or the other? Because some people I just don't have time in the morning. Are they equally as effective if they just visualize it, the intention, without writing it down? What's your thoughts on goal setting?
I think it can depend on who the person is and what it is that they like, what's important to them, because people have different communication styles and ways that they react to things. So I think it's having a consciousness of really visualizing it, whether you just carry it in your head. I am a big fan of writing it down, and it's something I notice with clients all the time that it makes a very big difference. Everything from having clarity about what your actual goals are in your business in order for you to be able to track and feel like you have success, if you know what that looks like. It also helps with planning and prioritizing. So I go through a process once a year and then once a quarter of looking at what's an overall, strategic initiative for the business for the year, and then what are the three main priorities, and then really breaking that down into what are then activities that are supporting of that. So it helps to sort through I always get random creative ideas to do a bunch of stuff, some of which I still do because I'm just that wired that way. But primarily, I can immediately see, I have it actually right up on my wall right here. I'm like, I'm not doing that. I've defined the things that will make the biggest moves moving forward. And we can be extremely busy and doing all kinds of things that feel important, but they're not necessarily the things that are going to be the big moves, like these linchpin milestones that you have, where one thing is going to be totally related to another. Having a well messaged, integrated website that becomes a foundation for you to then, go do a talk and have a great video of you speaking so that you can connect with other people. Like, depending upon whatever your path is, there are certain things that you really need to do, and you can spend all your time generating activity, but without that focus, then it's hard to know what you're doing. An interesting thing that Mark Otto and I have been talking about, because this is kind of his jam too, is we also get very focused on thinking that we just need the plan. And it's not just the plan. It has to be the plan plus the small daily actions. How many people, probably like 85% of people listening, took the time to do a big plan and think about what all the initiatives were, whether it's a business plan or these are my goals for the year, and then you don't actively look at what are your habits around taking action, and then what are ways that you're putting time in your calendar to make sure that you're focused on what you're doing and what you're not doing. And it's I used to be a consultant to corporations for the first 10 years of my business. It's exactly the same for organizations as it is for individuals, for entrepreneurs. So organizations do the same thing. We want to do this, we want to capture this market share, right? But if there isn't the action toward it, the stuff never gets done.
Man, there's so much, so much, so much. There's like a ton. My head's exploded. There's so much there. I'm going to back up. I love what you said. Yeah, write it down. You're a big fan of it. I am too. We definitely do that in Entrepreneur Fitness Academy. Write it down. But I like what you said too. You actually, it's all about, hey, you write it down, but then chunk it down, because otherwise, into steps, and then you monitor as you go. We call it the 5 to Thrive, where, we focus on the 5 things to get you to whatever goal it is, whatever health goal you want. So there's 5 things. So instead of, oh my God, there's all these things. No. There's only 5.
Yeah.
So I love that whole idea of breaking it down to steps. And I love what you just said too. Is it's everyone wants to plan. It's so true. Everyone wants to plan, but it's about everyone wants a house. Well, you need that foundation before you build that house. You need a foundation, and
Right.
right. And so I'm such a big fan of that, and actually that's why, like I said, I keep going back to it. But I work with entrepreneurs 4 weeks. We don't get
Hmm.
into the actual plan until week 3, and people are like, "What are we doing here?" But it's
Yeah.
about building, like you said, Pam, building those habits, those rituals, that foundation, and then stack the plan on top of it. I could not agree with you more. I'm so glad to hear that you have that same philosophy because I do too. And sometimes we wonder, right, at the beginning of the year, like, well, here's my resolution, and we have the plan, but okay, where are the habits to support it, right? So
Yeah, I really love that. I love taking action. I was working with a couple folks the other day, and there was somebody who's worked with them too, and we were talking about sales activities and what to do. And I was like, okay, let's look at some actions that we can take to try some test and try some things, you know. And the person was like, wait a minute, you know, don't we need to kind of step back and look at the strategy and evaluate? And I was like, no, actually, we don't at this stage. Like, we will get there, but the very best way to find out is through action. Like, just start drinking more water or, you know,
yes,
begin to move 30 minutes in the morning because then physiologically you start to notice it. The same exact thing is true in business where you begin to have calls with people or you begin to approach things a different way. The learning you have about if that strategy works or not is really deep. Now, you don't do it forever, otherwise you're just constantly shooting from the hip.
sure,
But initially, I really love that approach. And I could see
yes.
where you could get some resistance because we feel like we get great satisfaction in putting the plan together. And I get it. Like I want to know also what my objectives are. But
Sure.
then I've also watched myself like not necessarily hit them over time,
The-
which is really where I need to be spending the work.
yeah, no, it's so. I had a thought, and I want to run it by you. Oh, it's the whole idea where it's, hey, if I was more motivated, I'd start moving more. And it's just the other way around. It's like, hey, start moving more, and you will be more motivated, right?
Exactly
It's like
right.
looking through the opposite end of the telescope. Thank you for that, Pam. That is a lot of stuff there, a lot of valuable stuff. I want to know, without sounding too cliche-ish, if that's even a word
Hmm.
here. You've been doing this for 21 years now. You've done a ton. You keep doing a ton. You've written 2 books. We all have our whys for why we exercise, why we're out to lose 20 pounds. You have your whys for what is that for you? Like, why do you do what you do? We kind of touched upon that. You love the process earlier. That's kind of what fires you up. But
Hmm.
why do you do? What's in Pam that gets her fired up every day? Oh, well, what's your whys?
You know, to me, a lot of the whys in specifically choosing the small business market and in particular in choosing the people that I want to work with is my major in college was international service and development with a focus in Latin America and
Hmm.
like non-formal education in Latin America. So I lived in Mexico and Colombia. And I really believe looking at the world and the kinds of challenges we have, which are massively significant right now, right? In terms of what we face as a society, what we face as an economy, that the only way through is by strengthening and fortifying the leadership capacity of the average person, right? The everyday person. And I specifically have passion for underdogs, right? People who are ignored, the person with the least power in the room, the people maybe have lived with the most oppression and challenges. What totally fires me up is where you start to see what happens in the transformation from within, where people begin to feel and understand the power they have regardless of the circumstance and begin to transform and begin to have that process of creation. That for me in Capoeira, I called it Community Action Project, which is a program that I've co-founded with our artistic director. And we started with one kid, Jimmy Harkin, who grew up in Nicaragua and then he was a refugee in San Francisco. And he came in like this, really shy, kind of chubby kid, into class. And we grew the youth program from just Jimmy to 250 youth. And most of them were from really challenging neighborhoods, situations you can't even fathom, like literally being shot at on the way to school, diving behind dumpsters, parents in prison. Really, their life situations were very challenging. And they're very resourceful, amazing, intelligent, creative, wonderful kids, right? That just happen to be in that situation. And so watching the transformation that they had was so powerful. Jimmy now actually owns his own MMA studio. So he's a black belt in jujitsu and he has his own studio in San Francisco. He's been, he was champion in Vale Tudo in Brazil, which I was like, if you win Vale Tudo in Brazil, which is not Vale Tudo, but what's it called? where it's kind of no holds barred. I'm forgetting the Portuguese name for it, but it's like the toughest kind of a fight that you have. It's sort of like, the uh, why am I forgetting all the names
Like
for
the
it?
MMA, like
Like MMA, but you have the
yeah.
challenges. What is it called when you have it in the octagon? The
It's not
all
grap
styles play,
mixed
right?
martial. It's yeah. I'm losing.
Somebody's listening is like screaming into their,
Yeah.
like, it's this, and I know it is. But anyway, so where it's like he won like one of those challenges. Brazil is like one of the toughest places, the best fighters, totally amazing spirit there. And he went and won a national championship. So things like that for me, like that heart and that spirit. It doesn't matter what your situation is or what your background, but to me, when we do begin to really help wake up the power that exists within the people who feel the least amount of power, it energizes and it wakes up and it connects and it creates so much more possibility, and there's a lot to really look at and feel overwhelmed and feeling really negative about. And the only way through that I see it is in just identifying and working with and helping to light up these people, who um, are everywhere. They're all of us, right? We all have that kind of spirit inside of us, but that to me is really the kind of thing that makes the transformation happen. And it gets me going, and it's manifested in any way. All of us, regardless of our circumstances, kind of have that potential to be creating something great. But that's the thing, I think, that when we learn how to build, we learn how to create, we learn how to earn our own living. I'm not tied to entrepreneurship as being the only work mode that matters. That's one of the reasons I wrote Body of Work, because I think we worship it to a ridiculous level, and it's annoying, of like telling people that they're not creative and cool if they don't work for themselves. That's just ridiculous. But it does give us a lot more opportunities to change our own reality. And that's something I believe in. That's something I can really get behind. And it's worth it for me to get up every day. I've been given a lot of privilege, and I don't take it for granted. And I really want to use it in a way that people deserve.
I can tell. I can just how you spoke of that. You can just tell. You just exude just like that. Hey man, here's why I do it. I love that. Thanks for sharing that. You're helping others to be at their best. I always say, hey man, if I can look at even myself, if I can help others be at their best, then everything and everyone around them benefits. Sometimes we think, hey, if we take care of others first, then I'm the good Samaritan, and let me do that and put myself last. I tend to disagree, and I'm with you. I like to help empower people mentally, physically, so they can go out and be the difference maker. And even just what you said, Pam, what I heard from you earlier, and I hear this from a lot of my clients, and it makes me smile ear to ear, just from you doing what you do. Look at what the impact it's having on your daughter, the visualization. You guys are doing that as your daily habits, but the impact it's having around those around you, the clients I have, their kids, and I was starting to say, no, I can do this, Dad. I can run up that hill. No, I'm okay. It's like the difference we start to make is like incredible.
Mm-hmm.
But that only happens when we take care of we can't expect everything else to be at its best if we're not
Yeah.
at our best. So I love you sharing that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I almost want to say that my next question, I think you might have just answered it, but I'm going to ask it
Mm-hmm.
anyways, because you've written 2 books. You're doing a ton. You've done a ton. There's always fears. There's always doubts. There's always failures. There's limiting beliefs. Like, even if we work on it, it still comes up. What do you do to and maybe that's what it is, you're wise, but what do you do to get past those fears and that self-doubt sometimes, or the stress or the anxiety? What do you do?
Yeah, I think it's a normal, natural part of being human. And if we don't have any fears or doubts, I worry because we need to. It's a protective force that, that we need to stay safe. And so it's not a bad thing. But I really try to recognize, and part of it is recognizing those habits and paying attention to, what is this fear? Is it something that truly I need to pay attention to because I'm ignoring something that is critically important that's going to hurt me in business if I'm, not paying attention to it, versus just the thoughts and doubts that I might have about, am I good enough? Am I smart enough? Will people like me? Like the Stuart Smalley, kind of things. And those generally, when you really just take a quiet moment and examine it and really look at the thought, there's just some good coaching tools where you can just look at it and say, is that really true? Is like everybody going to hate what I'm doing? Will everybody think I'm horrible if I send one more email promoting my program, or, whatever that is? Do I look, horrible on camera? And is it okay to be on camera even if I have to lose 10 pounds or something, right? That when you start to really examine it, you're like, okay, that's pretty ridiculous. My husband always says, would you ever say that to somebody you love or a
Ooh,
friend?
I like that.
Why are you saying that to yourself? And when you write it down and you notice when you're feeling really crappy or you're scared, you pull out, what am I thinking right now? And generally it's very fatalistic and it's very negative and it's shame-filled and very critical. And so that's the place that you can really make a difference, is when you change that thought. You examine it. I like to honor it. There's so much, I love Gary Vee as much as the next person. He's awesome. He's been a friend, a long time, but sometimes that the crush it mentality of just like run through the wall, it gives people the erroneous impression that it's not okay to feel fear, that if it comes up, you just have to like crush it. A lot of that happens in physical, right? Physical
Yes,
activities
of
too.
course. Yeah.
Whereas I like to think about it like I'm thankful for it. I'm thankful for the ways that instinct has kept me safe, traveling all over the world by myself, sometimes, especially my younger years, right? Being really foolish, being in places where it actually was quite dangerous. But, I trusted my instinct, having that sense of sometimes worrying about, are my clients okay? Am I doing the right thing in business, is going to be driving me to be better, to be focusing on improving my craft. So I like to give thanks to it. And then just like it were a little puppy or something, right? Give it thanks, and then you can move on. It's not dwelling on it. And for some people, it becomes all consuming in their whole life. And that's where practices like moving and meditating and, journaling or having fun, seeing a funny movie, shifting environments can all be things that can get you out of it. But, it's like I always say that if you are trying to erase fear from your life, I fear for you. It's not a smart move. It can be your best friend, and it's there as a protective force to make sure that you have enough and that nobody's going to come attack you.
Yeah, man. I want to get two things. I want to. This is like a ton. I'm trying to. I'm mentally taking notes. But two things you said there. I love that. Is I think for me, whenever I'm disappointed, it's because of my expectations. Because and you just said, hey, sometimes we expect that we shouldn't fall. Like the hustle, grind, go. That there's no falling, no time to be scared or fearful or anxious, whatever. I think that's BS. And I actually, with the entrepreneurs I work with, is we say, hey man, that's part of it. Expect that to happen. We'd be foolish to think it's not going to happen. It's okay that it happens. Let's have the tools to get past it. And what I try to do is we make an expectation. This is going to happen, guys. You'd be crazy to think it's not. But what I try to do is like, that whole notion, hey, fall 9 times, get up 10, right?
Yeah.
I believe in that. But what I'm trying to help the entrepreneurs I work with do is when you fall on that 9th day, I don't want 2 weeks to go by before you get up again. I'm trying to shorten that gap because we're going to fall. But hey, man, if it can only be a day or two, right? Come on, get back. So that's what I try to do. And I think that's what you're saying. Hey, guys, that's going to happen. And I think we put the pressure on ourselves that it shouldn't be happening. That's BS, guys. It's going to happen. It's part of the process. And I love what your husband said. I want to repeat it. Because I hear this a ton. Sometimes I don't do it as much now, but negative self-talk. It's like, hey, why you're such an idiot or whatever it may be. Why did you do that? And I love what he says and what you just shared with us. It's like, hey, would you say that to someone else? And if you wouldn't, then don't say it to yourself. I just it doesn't get any simpler than that. Think about what you're saying, what you're thinking. If you wouldn't say it to someone else, don't say it to yourself. I love that, Pam. Thank you so much for that's valuable stuff, man. Thank you for sharing that. Just if you don't mind, just a couple quick questions left, if that's okay with you.
Yes.
And I think you mentioned earlier, but I want to ask about it because I think I read something else, so I want to ask you about it. I know you walk every morning for an hour. Every morning, 5 days a week?
Yeah.
Every morning.
Yeah, so the weekends sometimes, like my daughter loves to snuggle on the weekends, so sometimes I don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, at least 5 days a week.
Love that, and I absolutely love. Okay, so that's the exercise is the walking. I love walking. Sometimes people think like, oh, well, I can only get in a walk. Do you understand that the scientific studies that show the benefits that walking alone has? It's through the roof. So walking is great, guys. I love that, Pam. And then I want to ask you because I read, maybe it was on your website. You had mentioned you wanted to start kicking in, and maybe this is me holding you accountable a little bit, but
Good.
Yoga, kickboxing, has that happened yet or is going to happen? What's going on?
It's so funny because I've just been noticing recently that I'm glad that I'm walking and doing it on a consistent basis, but for so many years I did martial arts, and I did right when I got my black belt. It was actually the day that I turned in the transcript for body of work.
Wow.
I turned it in at 4:18 p.m. and I did my black belt test at 5. Like I was hallucinating. It was like crazy because my teacher was moving that very day. So I haven't had that level of more intense activity, and I'm going to be 51 in August, and so I don't really feel like I have it in me to be doing the kind of bruising that I did earlier. I feel it in my body and everything, but I do really want to be doing some type of more intense activity. So I'm kind of evaluating right now,
Yes.
whether it be, I like weights, like I think that is always good. My mom, who's 83, who's like in better shape than me, who hikes like 10 miles a week, twice a
What?
week. She's awesome. And she's always telling me like, you need to do weights because it builds up your bones. And I'm like, okay,
That's
mom.
awesome.
So, that could be something good, but I like group classes a lot, and that can be
Sure.
very encouraging to do it. So,
Sure.
it's making all the pieces happen, but it's good. I need to be
Sure.
held accountable because when I do it and once I get in, that's the key for me. If I just have to always be watching like everything I eat, I like to do it. I'm as conscious as possible. But as soon as I start doing some heavier exercise, everything works better.
Sure.
I eat better, I feel better, so that's really what I need to do.
Sure. It's almost like the momentum, the pendulum kind of swings like heavily. It's already heading in that direction, but man, you
Yeah.
add some more to it. It's like just swooshes that way
Yeah.
a little more aggressively, if you will.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thanks for sharing. I was just wondering because I think I had read that. I'm like, hey, I wonder if she's tried either one of them because I was going to ask you about it because I haven't done
Yeah.
kickboxing, so I was going to ask you about it. Two more questions, Pam. And one is, and this is like maybe just some parting advice, like for entrepreneurs, right? You've been at this for a while. You've seen a ton. What's one thing you wish you would have known or been told at the very beginning of your entrepreneurial journey that you know now that you're like, man, if only I would have known that then, or someone would have told me that then? What would that be? What would that advice be?
I think it's more, there's a lot of things, but I think a primary one is really that, cash and finance is king of really, I know so many people who are creative entrepreneurs. I'm wired this way too, where they're much more motivated by the idea and the passion, the excitement of what they're doing than looking at the financial elements of, first of all, sometimes even when you are still in a full-time job, like for my Escape from Cubicle Nation folks, of really taking the time to make sure you have that strong foundation, and then just being really consistent in how you understand the importance of cash flow, right? Like looking at how it is that you structure your business so that you have that great stable kind of, revenue coming in. And depending upon the kind of business, things can look really different. Sometimes like in consulting, you can do a big project and get a whole bunch of money,
Sure.
right? And then it will go up and down. But it's just like really developing that rigor and an appreciation for that as a creative entrepreneur is something I found that has been a really helpful thing that came a little bit later. It's like in consulting, I always did well and I made more than I did as an employee and it wasn't a big deal. But, as you start to grow, now I have a small business incubator space here. I have a family, like there's a lot more going on. And having those good financial habits and that awareness is something I think that's super important. And some people are born that way. And then for them, it's more having the habits to be like building their network and doing sales activities and that. That's the stuff I love. I'll do that all day.
Right, right. There's those two words again: awareness and habits. Something to be said about those two. But thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that, Pam. I appreciate it. It's even helpful for me. I appreciate it. I'm sure those listening to will gather info from that as well. Lastly here, I'm going to take the two obvious ones away from you, and I'm going to ask you, aside from being alive and in your health, what are you most grateful for at the moment?
My family, for sure. Yeah, that's
Awesome.
just, I am so grateful. It's a miracle every day. I was just talking with our daughter yesterday and our son. I happen to be talking about her a lot, but our son's equally as awesome, Joshua. And it's just a miracle to me, to think that we had kids and they're happy and healthy and thriving. And there's no greater joy for me than just spending time hanging out with them. And we do a lot as a family related to the work as well. And so that's fun of really having it be more of a family business. I had a retreat here that was kind of a combination of friends and colleagues. And my daughter always loves to just do activities. And so she led like an hour-long activity. And it was awesome. Like she got clay from the dollar store and then she did this whole debrief with people. It was all about team building, you know, and I was just sitting back like, wow. And that part is really fun of being able to do that in an integrated way. So it's kind of the type of business I have allows me to spend a lot of time with my family and to have that connection and have us all enjoy it. And then just to have them grow up being surrounded by so many awesome people. Like they know people from every background, every business. They're not going to have a limited view about what it is that's possible to do in life, just from the people who have come through their life of friends and clients.
I don't say this to be nice, but your kids are so lucky to have you. I mean, your daughter's doing what she does. There's only one reason why that's happening. But that's super cool. Thank you for sharing that. By the way, I follow Pam on Instagram. We might be friends on Facebook, but I definitely Instagram because I'm on there a bunch. And I just love the pictures you post. There's always family stuff going on. And just if a photo could speak, there's just positive vibe, energy. I just love it. So thank you for sharing that. And you can tell that family is a big part in your world. So thank you for sharing that. Pam, lastly is I want to know if people want to connect with you, learn more about Pam and learn more about your books and what you're up to, how can they find you, connect with you?
PamelaSlim.com. So just my name.com, and that's where all my social channels are. We have a beautiful small business incubator here in downtown Mesa, Arizona. So I have people flying in all the time to do sessions or come for workshops. So definitely hit me up. I'd love to connect with people.
Guys, check out Pam Slim. Her work is awesome. As a person, she's wonderful. Thank you so much again, Pam, for taking this time and this valuable, I think 45 minutes we went over the I promised you 30. I went over. I just couldn't stop asking you awesome questions. So
I don't mind at all. I have the time.
You're awesome. Thank you so much, and I look forward to at some point meeting you.
I hope so.
Thanks, Pam. Take care.
Thanks.